Story time of how I found out that I was dating my own brother. Yes, biological brother, same mom, same dad. So a little background information, my mom passed away when I was 2, my dad is currently in jail, and I live with my grandma. So at the time, I was 14, about to be 15, he was 17, about to be 18. So how this all started is one day I was at the baseball game with my friends, and he happened to be there. I was fangirling over this boy. Like, I saw him, and I was like, I'm going to marry him one day. I was feeling a little bold, so I went over and got his snap. And then I figured out that he had the same last name as me, and I was like, dude, that is dope. My exact words were, now I don't have to change my last name when we get married. So we hung out the rest of the baseball game, and I was starting to fall in love with this kid. Like, his smile, his laugh, I talked about him to my friends the rest of the night, and me and him started snapping for a while. So we started to hang out a lot. We may have hooked up a couple times, but I had to keep this all secret from my grandma because she forbid I dated somebody. So fast forward a couple weeks, we start dating. Months and months and months go by. Our 9 months come, and I finally tell my grandma. And this is where it gets bad. I'm running out of time, like, for part 2. Part 2 of how I found out that I was dating my own brother. Continuing on with the story, me and his 9 months were coming up. Also, he was adopted and his foster family absolutely adored me, so they were okay with me keeping it a secret from my grandma. They were the ones to help me tell her. So not only were our 9 months coming up, but his birthday was the next day. And he told me the only thing that he wanted for his birthday was for my part of the family to know that we were together. So one day I sat down at the table and I was like, hey, I think it's about time that I tell you. And then I told her everything and she asked for a picture. I showed her a picture and she was like, aw, he's cute. How old is he? At first she was okay with everything, and the age difference she was kind of iffy about, but then she accepted it. Then she asked his name. I told her his name, she said last name, gave her the last name, and she flipped out. She took my phone, didn't give me an explanation, and told me that if I ever spoke to him again, I would never be allowed out of the house. Finally, after she calmed down, she came to tell me that he was my brother. She asked if we had did anything, and I of course said no, but yes, we did. I'm running out of time, like, for part 3. Part 3 of how I found out that I was dating my own brother. Continuing on with the story, I didn't believe her not one bit, but then I realized the reason why I was attracted to him is because he kind of looked like me. No, I'm just kidding. All jokes aside, I did start to question because everybody did say we looked like brother and sister. I asked her for proof. She didn't have any actual proof that we were brother and sister, but then everything started adding up. I told him, and then he didn't believe me until he asked his foster parents who his parents were. Mind you, me and him never spoke about our real parents because we both told each other that we were uncomfortable speaking about it. Then we did find out that we had the same exact mom and dad. Me and him were both in absolute shock and had no idea what to do. I mean, we kind of were in love with each other, you know? So we decided to just date for a couple more months. I had to tell my grandma that we broke up and we were just hanging out and getting to know each other as brother and sister. But then we both decided that we needed to break up because it started to get a little weird. We never told absolutely anybody about this but my grandma. His foster parents didn't even know that we were siblings. And to this day, me and him do still flirt.
This story tells how I found out my boyfriend lied about his age. At the time, I was 15 and I found out he was 32. By the way, we're calling him Jake. So I met Jake at a college party and I was able to go because my sister had just entered college and I begged her to take me. So I had fun. I ended up meeting Jake, and from there we started talking. He told me he was still in college, and of course I told him I was still in high school. At the time he told me he was 18 and he slightly looked older, but I guess he just looked older for his age. And I know we weren't supposed to date at these ages, but my dad was 5 years older than my mom, and I didn't think that it was that bad being 3 years apart. We were together for 10 months. When my birthday came around, he wanted to take me out on a date. He picked me up from home and drove me to a restaurant, and 5 minutes before we get to the restaurant, he gets pulled over for not having his lights on. The cops asked for his ID, he showed the cops, and he put it down. I took a look at his ID, and it said he was born in the 1980s. It gets really bad after this. Let me know if y'all want a part 2. This is part 2 of how I found out my boyfriend lied about his age. At the time, I was 15, and I found out he was 32. So like I said earlier, he had got pulled over by the cops, and he asked for his ID. When he had got it back, he had put his ID in his cup holder. I took a glance, and I saw he was born in the 1980s. When the cops left, we drove off. Then I asked him, Jake, how old are you again? He's like, 18. Why'd you ask that? I picked up his ID and pushed it into his face. He quickly steps on the brake and snatches it from me. I was like, take me home. He said, no, it's a fake ID. I was like, what do you need a fake ID for? Where's your real one? He looked at me in shock. Then I told him I wanted to leave. I try to open up the car door to leave, and he tells me, you're not going nowhere. Guys, this is when it gets really scary. Y'all let me know if y'all want a part 3. This is part 3 of how I found out my boyfriend lied about his age. At the time, I was 15, and I found out he was 32. Okay, so like I said before, I saw his ID, and I could tell he was lying about how it was fake. So I immediately wanted to get out. I tried to open up the door, but it doesn't open. I told him to let me out. He responds, "You're not going anywhere, and you're not leaving me." I then start pushing on him to get me out. He stops and says, "If you keep pushing on me, we're going to crash." So I grabbed my phone and I called the police. He took my phone and threw it out the window. And I'm like, where the hell are you taking me? Guys, this is when it gets really dangerous. Y'all let me know if I should make a part 4. This is part 4 of how I found out my boyfriend lied about his age. At the time, I was 15 and I found out he was 32. So I tried to call the cops and he took my phone and threw it out the window. I didn't know what else to do, so I just started throwing hands. And in the process, he ended up hitting the car in front of him. He created a big dent in the back of the car, and the car in front stops. And the guy in the car jumps out and starts yelling at Jake. I start waving my hand for help. He backs up and runs back to his car. I was confused at first until I saw the police arrive 5 minutes later. So I guess he had called the police. When the police had got there, they had patted Jake down, they asked questions, and investigated the whole car accident. They asked me questions about what happened, and I told them. I ended up having to tell my parents. We had to go to court. Jake, on the other hand, went to prison. The whole situation was weird, and he lied throughout the entire relationship. After everything was over, I learned my lesson with guys like him. I now do background checks on any guy I date.
Story time about how I actually got away with sneaking out. It was the summer before my junior year in high school. So my sister and my friend were sleeping at my house. And I didn't live with my parents at this time. Well, 2 a.m. rolls around and we get a text from our friend. And he goes, "Oh, do you want to come to my party right now?" And we really wanted to go, so we had to come up with this elaborate plan on how we were going to get out of my house and get back in. Because we had to worry about a dog who freaks out every time someone leaves and comes back, motion-censored lights, adults waking up at 4:30 in the morning, and I was on the first floor of the house, thank God. So I had my sister put the dog in the bedroom so that way he wouldn't bark whenever we left. And my sister really took one for the team here. And then I told her whenever they wake up, let the dog back out of the room and lock the door, just in case they came to check in on us. So we called an Uber and bolted out of my house. Like for part 2. Okay guys, sneaking out part 2. And for all of you saying like, oh, why'd you have to sneak out if you weren't like, living at your parents? I lived at my grandparents' house and they are strict as hell. Anyways, so we're at the party and we're having a great time, and I look at my phone and I realize that it's 4 o'clock and they wake up at 4:30 a.m. So we ordered an Uber and we had the guy drop us off down the street. So we're walking down the street and we finally get to my neighbor's house and we can see all the lights were on in my house. And my sister's been texting me the whole time basically saying, "Oh, they're awake, I hear them, OMG, like you better hurry up." And I'm texting her like, "Get the dog in the room," because he would have barked loud as hell if he saw us. And I forget if it was me or her, but one of us had to pee really bad and peed somewhere. So we're basically on our stomachs crawling back to my house through my yard, so that way none of the motion censored lights come on. And one of them came on, and the windows don't really have curtains, so I could see my path like looking outside the window. Oh, there's gonna be a part 3. Okay, part 3, but for all the new people, guys, stop telling me to post the part 2 because I always post my part 2s. Okay, so the motion censored light comes on, and we literally stop dead in our tracks. Meanwhile, we're literally laying in the grass, like just don't even know what to do. And there's this side door that we were gonna go through. So my sister put the dog in the room and we're just waiting for the techs to run in the house when they're both upstairs. But my pap was looking outside trying to figure out why the light went on. And then I hear him say, "Oh, it must have just been a deer." So my sister finally texts us like 5 minutes later that, they're both upstairs. And I waited so I couldn't see them in the window anymore. And we bolted in the house. And I ran in the bedroom and we both smelled disgusting because we were both laying on the grass outside. When we get in, we lock the door so that way we can change our clothes, act like we're going to sleep, and then unlock the door. And my grandma comes down literally 10 minutes later to check on us. Like if you want more stories on me sneaking out. Story story time. My boyfriend beat up his ex-girlfriend because she tried to kill me. So it was my sophomore year in high school, and I had just gotten with this guy who was fresh out of a relationship. And let me tell you a little bit about his ex-girlfriend. So before him and I even started dating, him and his ex-girlfriend were together for like 2 years. And guys, this girl was fucking psychotic. Like, let me give you a quick example. Last year, I had a class with him and her, and the teachers assigned partners for this one project. Well, her boyfriend got paired up with this other girl. And anybody who would even talk to her boyfriend would get jumped by her and 8 of her friends. So his girlfriend starts being buddy-buddy with this girl. And his girlfriend goes, "Oh, do you want to come to the bathroom to hit my dab pen?" So the girl says, yeah, thinking that she's being all nice and shit. So they both go to the bathroom and they're gone for like 25 minutes. So I asked to go to the bathroom because I want to see what's going on. So I walk into the auditorium bathroom and nobody's really around that bathroom. And this bitch is getting beat the fuck up. Like for part 2. Okay, part 2. Okay, so like I said, I walk in and this bitch is getting her shit rocked. Like there were like 5 girls in there beating the shit out of her. All of them just look at me, so I walk out and go back to the classroom. And the one girl went to the hospital and the other girl got suspended. So back to present day. So after school that day, I get a ride with him and his friends to his house. Well, as we're all driving to his house, we realize that his ex-girlfriend's car is right behind us. And it's literally her and all of her friends. And at this point, my boyfriend's really fed up with her shit. Because she keeps following me around school, texting me saying she's gonna kill me, saying he got her pregnant, always says that he's been cheating on me with her. So my boyfriend pulls over the car, and at this point, I think it's a trap. I'm like, oh shit, he's gonna let me get beat the fuck up. Well, he tells me to stay in the car. He gets out and walks over to her driver's door and tells her to get out of the car. So her and all her friends get out, and one of her friends starts punching him. While he's distracted with that, his ex runs over to the car, opens the door, and pulls out a fucking knife. Like for part 3. Okay, part 3. She fucking has a knife up to my neck, screaming at me. And I'm staying quiet as fuck because I do not want to get my throat slit by this bitch. So all I see is my boyfriend rip this bitch out of the car and start stomping her in the fucking ground. And whenever he went and ripped her out of the car, the knife like slashed my leg open, so there's fucking blood everywhere. And we're like at the beginning of his cul-de-sac, so all the fucking neighbors are outside watching him stomp this bitch into the ground. And then one of her friends comes around the other side of the car, grabs me by my hair, rips me out of the car, starts beating the shit out of me. So then one of his friends starts beating up that bitch too. So obviously the cops were called. My boyfriend went to jail. She also went to jail. And after that happened, my parents made me move schools. But after that, word got around that they were dating again. Good luck to the next bitch.
Story time of how my best friend got so weirdly obsessed with me that she even plotted to kill my boyfriend. So at the time, me and this girl, let's just call her Olivia, had only been friends for about 2 years. I mean, we really did everything together. We were with each other 24/7, and I mean, we were pretty good friends. But the only thing about our friendship is she did not like when I had other friends. I mean, she didn't have any other friends herself, but literally she would joke around about strangling my other friends because she didn't like when I gave my attention to anyone else. But honestly, I just thought of it as a joke. And then I started dating this guy, let's just name him Jacob. He was probably the sweetest guy I had ever met, and he was a real simp for me. So we started dating and about 4 or 5 months go by, and he started getting these texts from a random number. And it would always be cringy things like leave her or you die, get away from her, and like stupid cringy threats. Then one night, me and him were just hanging out. Then he gets a text with his exact address saying he had till tonight to leave me or he wouldn't see another day. Then we hear a knock at the door. I'm running out of time, like for part 2. Part 2 of how my best friend got so weirdly obsessed with me that she plotted to kill my boyfriend. So continuing with the story, we heard a knock at the door and it ended up being her. And she said, "Oh, I'm just coming by to check on you and make sure you're okay." Mind you, we were at his house. And he looks at me like, what is she doing here? So I asked her to leave, and then she ends up getting so mad at me just because I asked her to give us alone time. So the night goes on, and then when I get home, she's in my room. At this time, my whole entire family was out of town, and I was the only one home. So I was like, hey. It was literally just like a normal night, and then I go to shower, and when I get back out of the shower, she's gone. And then my boyfriend calls me, and he goes, "Why is Maddie here?" She had like this black mask on, but she's stupid enough to not realize that we know it's her. And I mean, we're being real here. She was my best friend at the time, so of course he's not going to call the police on her. But she had a knife in her hand, and he opens the door and he like pins her against the wall and then calls 911, I guess. And then to sum it up, when they get there, she tells them everything that she was going to do, and then they put her in a mental hospital. But she said that she was going to murder everybody that gets close to her.
This boy lied about his age just to date me. Story time. So back when my cute self was a senior in high school, there was this new girl that came to our school. Long story short, me and her ended up becoming super close. I went to her house, spent the night. Her family loved me. I mean, why wouldn't they? Anyways, she had a brother. We're gonna call him Binky. Me and Binky got pretty close. Now, I want you guys to keep in mind, Binky didn't go to my school because their parents were divorced. So the sister who I was friends with lived with her mom, and Binky lived with his dad who lived in another city. But sometimes Binky would go to his mom's house, which is how I met him. Now that we got that out of the way, as me and Binky were getting closer, one day he asked me, "Hey, how old are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I just turned 17. How about you?" He told me, "Oh, I'm 17 too, but my 18th birthday is coming up." After a while, me and him eventually started dating. Then one day, I ran into his cousin who happened to go to my school. The rest of this story is crazy. This boy lied about his age just to date me. Story time. So I ran into his cousin who just so happened to go to the same school as me. What a small world. Anyways, we start having a conversation and she asked me, "Oh my God, are you dating Binky?" And I was like, "Oh, how do you know that?" Because at the time, I didn't know that she was his cousin and he didn't go to the same school as me. So I didn't know how she would have known that. And then she tells me, "Oh, that's my cousin." As we're talking, she says, "Oh, are you gonna go to his birthday party?" And I'm like, no, he actually didn't tell me he was having a birthday party. Weird. And she's like, "Yeah, that's really weird because it's like coming up next week." And I'm just sitting here like, well, maybe he'll tell me. He probably just had a lot on his mind. And then she says, "I can't believe he's gonna be 16 already. Time flies. We're gonna throw him a sweet 16 party." After she says that, I just look at her like, you mean 18, right? Like, you said 16. I think you meant 18. Sorry, there has to be a part 3. This boy lied about his age just to date me. Story time. Part 3. So his cousin starts talking about "I can't believe he's gonna be 16. And I look at her thinking I'm tripping. Like, "You said 18, right? Like, you didn't mean 16, you meant 18. And then she's like, "No, I meant 16. So that's when I found out he's actually 16 or about to be 16. So I was 17 dating a 15-year-old. And I know a lot of you were like, "Oh my God, it's not really that much of an age gap." Listen, the fact that he lied about it is bad enough for me. Secondly, I would have been 18 and he still would have been 16, turning 17. But that's a little weird for me and I didn't want to catch a case. That's why I wasn't looking for a younger boy. After I find out this new information, of course I tell my best friends. And they start hyping me up, "Break up with him," which is what I did. I sent him this huge paragraph. I kind of went off. Of course, he replied to my paragraph saying, "I'm sorry, I don't want to lose you, blah, blah, blah." I basically told him, "Sorry, I don't want to be with Liar." I blocked him and haven't seen him.
So this is why you have to be careful of people videoing you doing the nasty. So every year my town holds this event called Movie Under the Stars, where essentially a giant movie is projected onto a screen, but all the kids in my area just go to mess around with each other. So my friends and I decided to show up to this, and there was another group of guys that showed up as well. And one of my friends ended up knowing one of the guys in that group, so we went over to go talk to them. And a guy who was really cute kept making eye contact with me. So I literally didn't shut up about him for the rest of the night. He ended up snapping the girl next to me saying, "Hey, who's the girl in the jeans?" Meaning me, so all of us were freaking out and I got a Snapchat. We snapped for a bit and we planned for me to sneak out to go see him that night. So I snuck out of my friend's house, got to his house, and we did a few things, but no big deal. About 2 months go by and we're still talking, but we're also saying "I love you." But I ended up being messaged by a popular guy around this time who wanted me to come over to his house. I figured since me and the guy that I was talking to weren't officially together, it'd be fine. So I did, but the guy ended up finding out about it. So I had to go over to his house and basically beg for forgiveness. He said he forgave me, but this is when he came up with the plan to video me, which went south. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Instagram. Part 2 to my ex videoing me doing the nasty. So even though he forgave me, he still decided to video me like doing the famous "call her daddy" move. We continued to talk after this, but after a few days, some of the kids in school started to look at me funny. They would act super weird around me, and eventually I just asked someone what happened. And they were like, "Well, there's a video of you." I wasn't too stressed about it, I just asked him if he would stop showing people. And he said he would, but the video continued to go around. I started to worry once my best friend's cousin told my best friend's mom. That night, my best friend's mom went over to our house to tell my dad. My dad absolutely freaked out, and this is how everything went so downhill. My dad literally wanted to send me away to boarding school, and we ended up getting a call from the police about this issue. The guy ended up getting charged over this video. He was supposed to do community service, but ended up not doing it, so he was just fined. I really didn't want anything like this to happen, and we're now friends today. So I guess everything's okay. If you guys have a story you'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram.
This is part 2 of how my best friend older brother tried to secretly date me. And I was 13 and he was 24. So he messages me asking for me to be his girlfriend and to send nudes. I told him I didn't feel comfortable doing that, but he said if I did not, he was going to break up with me. So I was dumb and I went ahead and sent them because that's what I thought you're supposed to do when you get into a relationship. So for a couple of weeks, we'd text. He'd call me once in a while. My best friend at one point asked me if I wanted to sleep over for the weekend. So I packed my bags and I came over. In the middle of the night, I got really thirsty, so I went to the kitchen to go get some water. As I'm drinking, out of nowhere, something squeezes my breast. And I, of course, got really scared and screamed. I turn around, and it's my best friend's older brother. He tells me, why was I sleeping in her room when I could have just been sleeping with him? And then he pulls me into his bedroom. Now, this is when it gets really crazy. Like for part 3. This is part 3 of how my best friend's older brother tried to secretly date me. I was 13 and he was 24. So like I said, he told me I should be sleeping in his bedroom and pulled me into his room. I was a little nervous because I've never been alone with a guy. When I go to sit down on his computer chair, he locks his bedroom door. He walks over to me, picks me up, and sits me onto his bed. I was like, I'm okay, I can sit on the chair. And he shushes me with his finger to be quiet. Then out of nowhere, he starts taking all of his clothes off. And I mean everything. I ask him, what are you doing? And he's like, come on, I know this is what you want. And I was like, no. And I told him I was going back to bed. I get up to walk to the door and he stops me from getting out and holds onto the door. If y'all want to know what happened after that, let me know down below in the comments. This is part 4 of how my best friend's older brother tried to secretly date me. I was 13 and he was 24. So he was completely unclothed and everything was off. And he was insinuating that we were going to do something. I try to run out of the room and he stops me from leaving. I told him I wanted to go back to bed with my best friend. And he's like, you're my girl and you're staying with me. I started to get really grossed out because he started to get very aggressive. And I was so confused on what was happening, so I just screamed. And he gets so mad at me. My best friend's mom yelled out, is everything okay? And he lets me out of the room. I walk into the hallway and I told her I just stumped my toe. Then I went back into my best friend's room like nothing ever happened. And still to this day, I never told anyone until now.